Welcome to Digital Ship webinar on real-life solutions for remote maritime operations. I'm your host, Vaida, together with Carl Jeffries, founding editor of Digital Ship, and our guest speaker, Michael Owen. He is the Marlin's director for energy for maritime. Very soon, Michael will share his experience about what works and what doesn't when helping companies digitize remote operations and accelerate their digital transformation. So during all the talks of the webinar, we encourage you to send your questions to the Q&A box anytime, and we'll address them in the second part of this webinar. And now I'm inviting Carl Jeffrey to get started.
Okay, thanks, Vida. So we're looking today at the concept of remote operations in shipping. So remote operations as a topic has been used in the oil and gas sector for quite a long time, and now it's making its way into the shipping industry. The subject is maritime connectivity, but we're focusing on the business value we're getting from the connectivity, not the connectivity itself. So there's lots of elements to remote operations. There's monitoring the vessel and its performance. There's monitoring the equipment on the vessel, including by suppliers monitoring equipment. There's moving work from on board to the shore, so perhaps we can have less people on board the ships. There's also updating the shipboard software automatically rather than using it with USBs or CDs. So all kinds of diagnostics and help. And then finally, we're leading to more levels of automation or perhaps autonomous ships. And from a connectivity point of view, we can be talking about satellite services and combining them with 4G services. We've got challenges with network management. We've got challenges with cybersecurity. So our speaker today is from Marlink. They say they're the world leader in maritime connectivity. They've been ranked a market leader in maritime VSAT by a number of market reports. And our speaker is Michael Owen, who's the Director of Energy for Maritime at Marlink. So Michael is from South Carolina and he calls Colorado his home, but he's currently living 30 kilometers south of Oslo. So the format today, Michael is going to talk for about 20 minutes and then we should have plenty of time for questions. So please load your questions up in the question and answer box, and also you can score and rank other people's questions. Michael's been working in international technology sales with particular expertise in business critical operations in remote environments for about 20 years. And the webinar today is sponsored by Marlink. So I'd like to invite Michael to start his talk. Thank you.
Great. I'd like to thank Carl and Digital Ship for this opportunity. And I mean, it seems fitting that we're meeting on Zoom instead of in person for a presentation on remote operations. So I'm told we have a mixed audience of roughly 300 registrants. So I'll try to keep this kind of high level technical and provide some real life examples. So my goal is to make this instructional and informative and not just like a sales pitch or anything like that. But with that being said, I'm compelled to tell you a little bit about the exciting organization which I work for. So at Marlink, we believe that a connected world is a better world. So Marlink is well-established market leader with over 70 years experience and recognized as the #1 maritime VSAT connectivity provider with a wide portfolio of fully managed network solutions based upon intelligent hybrid network and unrivaled digital solutions. We strive to deliver above and beyond expectations to help you to run remote operations in an ever smarter and profitable and sustainable way, ultimately giving you competitive advantage. So we're financially strong despite the unique situation presented to the global community in 2020. And we're growing with over 100 new installations every month, which has been really incredible in light of the challenges that we've been presented during the pandemic. So really in order to facilitate remote operations, you don't just need a great network, but you need a smart network. And Marlink is a specialist that has experience to handle these diverse communication requirements. So instead of dealing with different suppliers for different networks and technologies and devices that are needed to integrate your onshore and offshore operations around the world, we can manage this for you. So it helps to simplify the implementation of digitalization programs and ultimately migration to cloud services. So the network we create is what we've created for you is future ready. So allowing you to adapt more quickly to changing business requirements and new technologies as they become available. So it's more of a permanent solution that delivers constant access to corporate applications, ensuring highly secure data transfer and giving you greater agility to respond to kind of the changing business requirements. So at its core, remote operations, to be effective, you need to really automate manual processes in order to increase your efficiency while paying close attention to the regulatory compliance and improve safety, basically, and security on site. So to give you an overview of what we really define as remote operations is it's just this, it's a roadmap. And like any roadmap, you need to define where you are to be able to map out where you're going. So as we're moving kind of left to right, then there you start out with kind of the basics. And so what this is the digitalization of content. And what we mean by this is removal of the requirement to exchange information and data physically. So this is all media, everything from paper and things like that, but then also USB sticks, tape systems, basically all of it. Because if you can remove the dependency on physical presence, then that enables the path for working remotely. And then when we talk about remote operations in a technical sense, it's a lot about surveillance. So it's sensor processes and things like that. And so in order to walk the path of this roadmap, you really need to examine the OT or operational technology that you have. And this is essentially a lot of the electronics that you have on the bridge. So power control, heading control, but to really move to true remote operations, then it's also about surveillance. So it's lookout, it's zooming, it's incorporation of AIS, so GPS positioning, ECDICS. So in the old days, we used kind of a hierarchical examination, because ultimately what this is it's industrial control systems. So we adopted kind of the Purdue model was the tried and true method, which is kind of a hierarchical approach to industrial control. But the world has changed. And so now in the Internet of Things, this is more replaced by a matrix. And so this is the reason that we're able to be more effective in capturing these technologies that we were in the past. So as we continue on the path, then we can move to intermediate. Now, there are some ship management companies today with operations and technical management, that are doing hundreds of ships. And they're doing everything from, long range, kind of analytics, taking applications and services to provide value based upon data management to key decision makers. And so this can be analytics, so predictive models, optimization, monitoring of emission control, fuel efficiency, essentially finding new ways to unlock the value of data so that we can benefit the customers. And so this is here now, and I think a growing number of organizations in the general maritime community are starting to unlock these possibilities. But then as we move further to the right, to the more advanced, and this is where we're taking advantage of maybe some unfamiliar terms. And so it's things like virtual and augmented reality, where essentially what you're able to do is to use technology where you can have niche experts located at a remote operations center where they're utilizing, kind of local hands, where it makes those local hands smarter. So another term that we're leveraging is situational awareness. And this is just a fancy way of knowing what's going on around you. So through both surveillance and sensors and things like that. And then what this does is it paves the path for exciting things like remote piloting. So you can have a single vessel that's piloted remotely, and that leads also to multi-ship piloting or something called cluster piloting. And then this is ultimately paving the way for the future of autonomous shipping. So we have a case that we'd like to discuss. This is something pretty exciting. So this is an organization called CIAL, and they were founded 3 years ago in partnership with the French Environment and Energy and Sustainable Development Organization. And then they've developed a project which is called ROSS. And ROSS stands for Remote Operated Services at Sea. And so ROSS had multiple goals, but first and foremost, they had to gain regulatory acceptance to be able to operate a vessel remotely with either a minimal amount of crew, or in a future scenario, but potentially doing this without crew on board. So this has involved an incredible amount of work from the France's Directorate of Maritime Affairs in order to secure the navigation license necessary for the demonstration voyage. And this demonstration voyage occurred in September of this year, where the vessel was being piloted from the control center in Paris. So Marlink and CL worked closely together to deploy our C-Link VSAT system with a highly resilient and redundant connectivity representing multiple beams, so that we're able to have a control system built on the backbone of state-of-the-art technology. So CL was able to leverage Marlink's expertise in both satcoms, but also cybersecurity, network resilience, and then working closely in cooperation with Bureau Veritas to ensure that the compliance meet statutory requirements. So the system is unique because there's this kind of a customized dashboard interface for this ROSS, and this monitors key performance indicators of the connection, such as latency, jitter, throughput. And so now with at least the background of regulatory approval in place, then CIA has ambitions to expand the program. So the ultimate goal is to build around 20 remotely operated and actually electrically powered vessels. And this is coming between the years of kind of starting in 2023 to 2028. And so this is going to be used for, among other things, underwater inspections for oil and gas, wind farms and things like that. But this is an example how the energy industry is pioneering the path for others to be able to leverage the successes that are being achieved. So a little bit of, why is this interesting? So, I mean, first and foremost, I mean, there's cost savings to be realized once this is in place. And so if we can have reductions of personnel, and particularly niche specialists, which I mentioned before, where they can provide expertise from shore on multiple vessels that's there, but also the surrounding logistics of moving not only personnel, but also moving data back and forth. We also get some benefits of safety, limiting risk of, number of personnel out on at sea, some efficiencies that can come in the future with different vessel designs that incorporate these types of technologies. And then coupling all these different things together, then it can lead to greener operational solutions for the future. So to try to give you some tips and things for this, I mean, first off, understand there's no magic silver bullet that you can get from operations today to something else. I mean, it's a tedious and necessary process where, precise descriptions of the control systems, so navigation systems, communications, ship integrity, all these different things need to be very, very closely described and designed to be able to enable this type of thing. And then, of course, then cybersecurity is paramount in this operation. So this is extending way beyond what we're starting to see with IMO 2021 and things like that. So also, I mean, no one is doing this alone. So, I mean, creating a network of partnerships are required, but you need to be aware that many of the shore-based solutions that are focusing on remote operations are really just not designed to work in a maritime environment. So, I mean, the message is that, the technology is no longer just coming and coming and coming and in the distant future that's there. I mean, it's on the doorstep. It's here. And so what this means is we need to prepare for smartly the challenge that are presented by this. So ironically, I mean, the biggest challenge that we've faced traditionally for implementing remote operation was not technology, it was people. And I don't mean the people on board, I mean people on the board of directors. I mean, the decision makers are, in some cases ex-captains or seafarers, and making the massive leap to trust technology has always been considered just too risky. But if there's anything that's really kind of positive that's come out of COVID, is that, it changed all the rules. I mean, even today, you're not at a physical digital ship conference, but you're at a virtual one. I mean, I don't think this would have been offered, much less had such a turnout if this conference was virtual a year ago in the pre-COVID, November of 2019. So, like I said, I mean, one of the things that's actually advancing this this acceptance is COVID, and so this is rapidly actually accelerating the process because of investments that are happening in both technology, but also, like I mentioned, it's the change of culture to be able to deal with the certain situation to make this happen. So also the adoption of cloud-based services has absolutely exploded. The day doesn't really go by where cybersecurity is not a factor for the IT organization, but also outside the IT organization, it's on the minds of everyone, and it needs to be. But then also the maritime ecosystem is changing, but it's challenging waters to navigate. So there still is a reliance on the physical data, and it needs to be understood, because this is something that can start your path now to understand that this is a hindrance to being able to make the adoption as the technology takes it forward. So, like I said in the outset, it's hard for me not to be excited about Marlink's role in all of this. And so, I mean, we have the most extensive satellite network that's dedicated for maritime operations. And so this is a state-of-the-art platform combined with this layered blanket of overlapping satellite coverage. And this becomes important because you need to have some layers of resiliency to mitigate blockage, or if you have structures in your way and things like that. So it helps to have multiple satellites that you have to take advantage of, because this provides redundancy, resilience, and reliance. And then from this solid foundation of SATCOM, we integrate hybrid terrestrial connections, 4G, oncoming 5G, directional Wi-Fi systems, these different types of things. And what this really does is give you end-to-end seamless connectivity with autonomous switching between the different networks and carriers, which is not always the case with other providers, which may have proprietary systems or other limitations that are in place. So we have network management, which is centralized with redundancies, which simplifies it across multiple network technologies and geographic locations. So we can leverage emergency network designs like SD-WAN orchestration and things like this. So Marlink also has a broad portfolio of IT solutions. I'll name, Keep Up at Sea, which is a custom developed automation and compliance tool to automate application updates and file transfer. And this is designed to work specifically in the maritime industry. And so this helps you to decouple the dependency on physical media that I described as a hindrance earlier. We have something called CyberGuard, which is a portfolio of next generation products to effectively protect and help with detection and recovery from cyber attacks. And we have the world's only maritime dedicated SOC, or Cybersecurity Operations Center, that can be leveraged for both advice, consultancy, but then also the ongoing care of your network. And then finally, I mean, people are still the most invaluable asset on board. So our portfolio of welfare services offers the best and most integrated and tailored crew solutions for better lives at sea. And so, I mean, you can learn more about this. We have a full overview on www.marlink.com. We have a showcase video which highlights how Marlink goes and be above and beyond in different situations and for different sectors. So on the website also, you can register for an IMO 2021 webinar, which will be held next week. Or you can do so by contacting your Marlink Key Account Manager. And so if you don't already have a Marlink Key Account Manager, then click on the Contact Us section on the website. We'll ask you a few questions about yourself so we can best direct you to a local specialist to assist you. So thank you. And I guess I'll send it back over to Carl, and we can see if there's some questions.
Oh, thank you very much. So I thought maybe as a sort of warm-up question, so our readers are involved in all kinds of different ships, and this sort of remote operations is more suitable for some companies or company types rather than others. I mean, there's a lot of skepticism about whether mainstream shipping is ever going to be autonomous, but I was quite skeptical myself. But then you hear about ships going out to inspect wind farms that are totally autonomous with drones that fly up, and you think, okay, maybe that can work. So where do you want to share some thoughts about which kind of sectors you think, and if this is most appropriate for in terms of full remote operations, or for deep sea shipping, what remote operations means for?
Well, okay, to look at it from an industry standpoint, I mean, it's been some of the more technically advanced areas that have been the pioneers, and that's the case with every technology. And so, I mean, I work in the energy sector, and so this is on the top level of many organizations to be able to leverage this type of technology to really drive competitive advantage. And so, but it's also expanding rapidly for other industry. Now we have some challenges. I mean, there's the compliance challenge that's ever present. And so by working with flag state and classification societies and things like that, the direction has been, how can we do things locally in a single geographical area? Because then you have a easier method to have a relationship to one flag state than multiple flag states, obviously. I mean, I'm based in Norway, and so there's a number of programs that are going on. I can mention one that's actually doing an autonomous vessel to actually relieve trucks from being on the road when they're coming down Norway. We have a very long coast, and so they're actually transporting fertilizer in a bulk carrier using an electric vessel that is designed to be autonomous as well, remote piloted, and then eventually autonomous as well. So it has more to do with geography, I think, of the other industries and how they're able to leverage it. I can also give another example of ferries. Another thing we have a lot of in Norway is where they're using some remote piloted passenger ferries to be able to come from these distances and those types of things.
Yeah, and it's an important point. I think remote operations doesn't necessarily mean autonomous ships, because if you're having experts on shore, that's also remote operations, isn't it?
Yeah. So I mean, it's more of how can we leverage. Yeah. Well, I'll just say exactly. I mean, it is a path to walk, and so I mean, there has been a incredible amount of attention on remote operations this year, just for the simple fact that you're sitting at home, I'm sitting at home. We still need support from others, and we have restrictions on where we can go. So this has really opened up the imaginations and capabilities for applying these types of things to other industries.
Oh, that's great. Well, if we go on to the Q&A, some very interesting questions come up. I like this one from Nimrod Hoffman about, can you give an example of an industry where top management has been part of an enabling force? I think there's two very good examples, which is Equinor and BP, but I don't know, would you like to give us an answer to that?
Well, I mean, I'll say I'm seeing this across the board. I mean, well, I'll give an example, and I guess I can give a plug, with OSM. I mean, the ship management organization, they have the remote operations center that they've employed in Singapore. I think it started actually in 2018. was when they opened it. And so, I mean, this was a strategic direction of the organization to employ some of the technologies that I'm describing, so that they can leverage, you know, the expertise from one location to be applied elsewhere.
Wow, that's great. And there's two questions asking about bandwidth. Got a Paolo Papo. As per your experience, is bandwidth still an issue? Gregor's Pardika. What kind of pay per megabit will you need to do that? I don't know. As a connectivity person,
Well, I mean, connectivity is of course one of the key aspects that of this. And so, is bandwidth an issue? Well, it depends on how we define the issue. Traditionally we've had technology budgets or things like that, and then that's where it fueled the cost of bandwidth. And then now what we're experiencing is by having greater investments in the connectivity portion, it's enabling savings across the board in other areas. So from the technical capacity of bandwidth, we have proliferation of lots of different things. I mean, if you're close to shore and have access to it, then it will still be terrestrial connections that will be the preferred medium. So 4G, 5G, Wi-Fi, WiMAX, I mean, you name it, the different connections that are there. But then as you get farther away from shore, then you have a reliance on satellite connectivity. So we've had the emergence of high throughput satellites. That's been one layer. We have things that are kind of non-traditional satellite systems that are coming online. So we have LEO systems and MEO systems and things like that. That also still help things more close to shore, but in deep sea, we're still having some of the more traditional methods that's there. That being said, the market is a function of supply and demand, and so as demand increases, then there will be a market reaction for this. But I mean, from a technical standpoint, I mean, we have vessels that are doing no longer in the megabits, but it's the tens and hundreds of megabits that are capable. And we're also able to use equipment on board that is less intrusive. So smaller equipment can be deployed, smaller antennas and things like that, that can achieve more than was available even 5 years ago.
Yeah, I think Gregor's would also like to ask you about possible unlimited plans. Since you're the connectivity guy, I guess you're the right person to ask. I guess we have to wait for Starlink before we can do anything like that, do we?
Well, I mean, it depends on what you mean by unlimited. I mean, our primary package is unlimited use. I mean, that's what our C-Link Premium is. I mean, you have a certain amount of connectivity and you get that as much as you can take. It's no cap on how much data that you're transferring. It's guaranteed at that level. So if you're looking for it from that standpoint, unlimited is here. If you want unlimited capability, then that's where we start having to leverage other mediums and things to that extent. So, I mean, you mentioned Starlink. I mean, it still will. I mean, it's first and foremost a consumer product that will work very well in highly dense metropolis. That's what it was designed to do. But I mean, once you get out to in the middle of the ocean, they still have some technical challenges to overcome to be able to have seamless connectivity coast to coast.
Yeah. Another point, I mean, building what Anchor is saying, a lot of companies don't have internet on ships, but I mean, remote operations doesn't necessarily mean high bandwidth. It can also mean if you get the right expert to deal with the right problem, that doesn't necessarily need a lot of bandwidth. I guess that's maybe an important point, isn't it?
Absolutely. We have this. I mean, remember, this is a path. And so, I mean, we have instances where you can leverage this type of communication with any connector. And so, if you're using traditional kind of L-band or I'd say entry-level products, you can certainly leverage these types of things that are there. Now, you won't be able to take the massive steps, but you can take steps. We offer some cloud services for just kind of data backup and those types of things. So if you have in your mindset that you're removing physical media is the goal, not massive amounts of bandwidth and remote control. It's certainly a path to walk and not a destination that you need to arrive at tomorrow.
Yeah, we've got quite a mixture of business and technical questions here, but maybe we'll keep with the last technical one. I don't know what relative high frequency data is, looking at Anton Zakharov's question. I don't know if you if that's something term you recognize.
Not offhand, I'll admit, but I can make a guess. I mean, what I would think is that if you're able to leverage different types of when you say high frequency data, and so this is real time, is how I would or near real time, that's there. So that does present a number of challenges that's in place, where we have to deal with some inherent things in satellite technology. So the satellite is still very, very far away from Earth, and so that link means that there is some latency involved. So being able to address that with a different methods is important. One of them is the platform that we use, but other ones is trying to devise the method or the dependency of the sensors or the surveillance that you're using to be able to incorporate that. I mean, I have instances where they're working on programs of remote piloting, and they have latency buffering of up to 4 seconds. And so that's, you know, in data transmission, that's an eternity. So it's really around the end-to-end design to make sure that your systems are resilient and capable to deal with the environments in which they're in.
Yeah. So if we go to these top two questions, I guess they're kind of similar. So Lennart is talking about changing the conservative culture in the shipping industry, and Gilberto is talking about getting the regulators to catch up. I mean, I would have thought the answer is that we don't have to go all the way to autonomous ships if we're bringing in remote experts. That's no regulatory problem. But I don't know if you'd like to share any thoughts on those 2 points.
Well, first off, I mean, yeah, like I said in the Seattle case, I mean, that was one of the primary, or actually the initial goal was to address the regulatory challenge. We will have, I mean, in international environment, that will always be the case because we don't have an alignment across all flag states into the jurisdictions maybe into what requirements that are in place. So the ability or the capability of some of these things will be hindered by flag state, certainly, and that could ultimately change some of the path in which we wish to walk. But as I mentioned in the beginning, I mean, technology is refreshing at a rate and actually catching up or is leading the path so quickly, is that regulation and legislation will always be behind it. But I'm hopeful that things will be in place, that the business drivers drive this so much that it will enable some standards to be developed, and that's ultimately what we need.
Yeah, but minimum manning levels. That's I mean, I guess there's not much drive to have less than 18 people on a deep sea ship, as far as I know.
Exactly. And so, but then what you can do is you can potentially change some of the profile of ones that are there. I mean, we have more automated procedures for, you know, everything from docking and remote assistance. I mean, I'll give you an example. And this is a prime example of how remote technology is actually not affected by this. I mean, we have telemedicine offerings, so that we can put a telemedicine kit that enables video communication directly with a doctor equipped with sensors. And this is a briefcase that you can come on board, and it's utilizing actually really small amounts of bandwidth to be able to leverage this. We're sponsoring a polar expedition where we sent them with a kit, and they just have traditional L-band connectivity. So it doesn't have to be massive amounts of data to be able to get benefits in place.
Well, okay. Well, we don't have any more questions on the board here, so I encourage everyone to put in questions. But meanwhile, maybe to talk about practical examples. I think people in shipping industry always love to hear about stories about who is doing what, and is there any other sort of clients that come to mind you're able to mention where companies managed to do something with remote operations, which we can talk about, do you think?
Well, I mean, most of my experience is in the oil and gas industry, and so I'd say that we're almost challenged to not mention a company that doesn't have that on their radar. I'm hesitant to start naming names because then I'm starting to reveal my client base, which I don't have permission to do. But I can give maybe some examples without naming names. And so we have, like I said, there's some remote operations centers that are being constructed and actually developed. They're focusing not only on the remote operations, but then also the cybersecurity element that's in place. I mean, I've even going back a couple of years where there's a major carrier that had refrigeration. So they had containers with refrigeration requirements, and so they put on a system to for insurance purposes to be able to monitor the containers on board to ensure that the systems on board were working correctly. And so that, in essence, help to reduce their premiums, and is just one additional element of, I guess, a real life case for the general shipping community where these types of technologies can be utilized.
Yeah, I mean, oil and gas normally has fiber optic networks, don't they? So they can do video leads 24 hours, and which I guess has been quite an important part of a lot of the oil and gas integrated operations projects. But I guess some of the ideas can be brought into shipping, can't they?
Yeah, well, it's not always fiber optics either. I mean, I'd say the prevailing thing is now surveillance cameras. Right. Being able to deploy this, also doing things like this, video conferencing and things of this extent, just to be able to leverage with the visual aspect to help things happen.
Oh, okay. We've got two more questions here. Peter Anderson would like to ask you about cybersecurity. Are you familiar with any regulation? Well, I suppose it's a broad subject, cybersecurity, isn't it? I guess we know how to do it, but it's very, very hard to do, and it needs focus, I suppose. Is that how? There's no short answer to cybersecurity questions, I suppose, are there? Yeah.
Let's see. Familiar with any regulation, or is it done on a case-by-case basis? We'll find. That's a good question, and I'd say that currently it's on the roadmap. I mean, IMO 2021 is focused around cybersecurity, and so I mean, from that aspect, then yes, I mean that's the most looming. I'll say broad-based regulation, but this is again what it's coming to. It's the adoption of standards that are in place. I mean, in IT, that's how we do a lot of interoperability. So using ISO standards and different elements to be able to make sure that things work together and work in a way that there's expectation on both sides of how that they're come. So as far as specific regulation that's in place around this, I don't think there's anything that's going to be broad reaching outside a particular jurisdiction. I mean, in Norway, we have some IT and cybersecurity standards that we're being asked to adhere to. And so a customer may have a requirement that we prove this, but I can't think of anything that's broad reaching that's going to go across all jurisdictions, with the exception of the IMO 2021. That's probably the closest. And then I'm sure there'll be things coming up from classification and societies and those types of things.
Oh, there we go. We've got 2 upvotes for Kate Callahan's question. She'd like to ask you about how the pandemic has affected Marlin's business.
Well, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, we operate in all different segments, and so the one that was, I think, impacted or harmed the most in the pandemic is the cruise industry. I mean, that one we certainly felt the effects from that, but leveraging these types of technologies and things that we have now put in place. I mean, I'll just give an example. I mean, one of the things is crew rotation has become a huge challenge for organizations because they have quarantine regulations, the logistics of getting people place to place. So one of the things that they've done is enabled more communication to help soften the blow to some of their crew. And so that's been a positive effect. But then also it's opened up more possibilities for Marlink customers to be able to leverage some of the other solutions that become presented from that. So I'd say overall, it's opened the eyes of some of the more traditional or reserved organizations to be more accepting of technology.
Yeah, and then let's go to Henrik, got 3 upvotes. He's asking about vessel OEMs. I don't know if he means shipyards by vessel OEMs or the equipment manufacturers, but do you have plans for working closely with the vessel OEMs to understand emerging digital services? I'm not quite sure what he means, but maybe it means.
Well, what I would, yeah, maybe it would be, yeah, manufacturers of vessels, but then also, maybe engine manufacturers or sensor controls and things like that. And so we do work with a lot of these organizations currently. I mean, in some cases they're customers, in some cases they're partners, so being able to, there's not anyone that is I'd say having the impression that the ecosystem will not change. I mean, I think that's evident. And so that's, as I mentioned in the presentation, that's been one of the things that has really catapulted the adoption of these types of things has been the pandemic. When I'd say 2 years ago, if you came to a management and said, we're looking to invest in IT for X, Y, and Z, they would say, oh, okay, is this necessary? Would be one of the first questions. Well, that story is, or I guess that question is not being asked. It's more of to what extent and what are our plans and those types of things. So, I often use the term of, digital native versus digital immigrant. And digital native are my kids that have never had a world without internet and connectivity, and myself being an immigrant that comes in, and I remember the days of not having this capability. And so as that I say digital natives mature, then they're also instructing us older or more mature decision makers on ways to better capitalize on the technology that's in place.
Yeah, we did a webinar on Tuesday. We had a speaker from a ferry operator. He said he had a new build in 2008 with 2 network connections and a new build in 2018 with 100 network connections. So that's a clear signal where this is going, isn't it?
Exactly. And to be fair, I mean, when we talk about network connections, it traditionally was how many people are you connecting? How many PCs are you connecting? Now that's no longer the case. It's the Internet of Things, and so it's thousands and thousands of sensors, and then actually less and less PCs that are in place. I mean, just the devices that we're leveraging is now becoming portable tablets and things like that that are leveraging cloud services opposed to local computing power.
Oh, there we go. This is Richard Doherty. I've just looked you up on LinkedIn. Chief Technical Officer with CIRM is putting this question here. So we've got a freely available implementing the CIRM cyber risk code of practice for vendors of marine electronic equipment and services. So okay, there's a lot of standards to help people do cybersecurity. I suppose it's just a question of making the effort to go through it all, isn't it? I suppose that's kind of...
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm grateful that Richard put that up there. I mean, there are an incredible number of guidelines that are in place, and that should be that should be recognized and appreciated, because this is what is developing into. I mean, it's a common challenge that people are met with in terms of cybersecurity, and only by having a community that is preparing against this is the best way to be able to ensure that the adoption of technology and the utilization of it in a safe manner are being leveraged. So yeah, very good point, and thank you for posting that.
Oh, that's great. Should we have a go at Anton Zakharov's question about the main competitive advantage you have against your competition? I guess the answer is your size, or do you think is it? Or?
Well, I'm not sure how much time we have.
15 minutes.
I'll give three things. I mean, one of them is our strategy, and so we've always taken a strategy of being technology agnostic to be able to address the oncoming new technologies that are in place, and so we leverage many standard components, but then also augment that with some internally developed things. So that's number one. Number two is, I mean, we have a long history and relationship with the maritime community, and that's one of the reasons why we design our solutions first and foremost for the maritime environment, where we're not picking off the shelf things that may have been devised for another industry, say banking or energy or something like that. And then lastly, I'd say that our willingness to go above and beyond expectations to really live the life with the customer. I mean, we feel that we're in a community and don't see ourselves as a supplier, but a partner, so that we can help to walk this path comfortably together.
Oh, okay. So it's something we haven't covered, just looking at a ship owner's perspective, not an IT department, but a ship owner. Where's the business benefit for this? I mean, obviously there's lots of benefits, but I mean, they can't necessarily cut costs by reducing crew, but I suppose it's probably safety and better maintained equipment is probably the best from a ship owner's perspective, do you think?
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, if your focus is not necessarily, well, and the focus shouldn't be necessarily removing personnel. I mean, that's, I mean, there are requirements in place for this, but I mean, I'd say almost across the board. I mean, the one that's most obvious and still to this day, the largest voyage cost is fuel. And so if you can do voyage optimization, we have the emissions control guidelines or regulations that are in place. And so these are technologies to be able to address those problems. And, you know, essentially, once you start to look at it from where are the largest cost drivers for the ship owner, and where there's potential ways that technology, not necessarily removal of a person, can assist them to address those challenges. That's the ultimate goal.
Oh, well, we've done lots of discussions about fuel, but it's a very complicated subject. I mean, in terms of your discussions with your own customers, because there's lots of angles. One is getting lots of SATAS data. One is having lots more expertise on shore, being able to see what crew are doing and getting a better understanding of the condition of the ship. I don't know if you have any sort of themes that you think and how people are using connectivity to reduce fuel costs that are coming up, and it's still a very new subject, I think, in terms of what people are doing with it. You know.
Yeah, well, I don't have a tremendous amount of insight, but I mean, at a very broad level, is that, I mean, it's not just about quantity of data. I mean, it's about information. And so if you can get information to make decisions more effectively and do that in real time, I mean, I'll just think about voyage optimization. You know, I mean, the conditions around the vessel are constantly changing. If you can adapt the operation to take advantage of the most optimal route or services that are available in regards to either speed or even something as I'll say important but maybe overlooked is, you know, the status of your coatings that are in place. You know, are you sailing as efficiently as you can? I mean, there's also the added areas of preventative maintenance. And so if you have sufficient data in place that can maybe do some predictions of things before failure or logistics or something like that, then it's the possibilities are quite huge.
Wow, it must be very exhausting for you answering all these questions. You're doing very well. We've got a very nice technical question coming in now from Tjerd Hutimer. I think it's cellular technology is the main theme here. So Where do you see cellular technology fitting in with all this as it supports higher data volumes and less latency, and the coverage is getting bigger? I think Marlink, you don't do any cellular, but you could do it. It fits, would
No,
fit fine.
we do. I mean, we don't manufacture it, but we sell it. I mean, we have it in multiple varieties. There is in the North Sea. There's ocean available LTE services that we have there. I mean, we have strategic alliances with large 4G providers, and so we have a smart network hub that, like I said, automatically switches and looks for the most efficient and effective bearer. And so it's, I was trying to see if I can read some of his question while I'm answering. He said, do you see this technology growing in importance for your customers and yourself? So, so absolutely. I mean, if you're able to take advantage of a more efficient carrier, then actually what I view it as is, can you leverage all carriers? I mean, if you get close to shore and can leverage 4G and those types of things, now that's not as a consistent service as satellite communications, because the distance that you are from sending towers and relative position, and it also takes into account some interference and things like that. And so if you're able to leverage that and do it in a consistent manner, then by all means try to leverage the most efficient bearer that you can. But then and then you can potentially even start to leverage the satellite for something else, such as data transfer or database replication, something like that, or just say, hey crew, we're getting close, and their streaming services work more effectively. So it's not an either or, it's all together.
Oh, and then the second question is also building on this theme of latency. How significant is latency? I mean, I suppose if there's any satellite involved, you're going to have a couple of seconds of latency. Well, I'm not sure it matters unless you're doing video conferencing, does it? Or...
Well, you'll have milliseconds of latency, not seconds of
right,
latency. Okay. So yeah, so I mean, we have a physical barrier just because of the distance it is from satellite to Earth, and so. And then so to answer the question about the significance of latency for remote operation, I mean, the bottom line, it depends. I mean, there are, one of maybe some of the misconceptions is that everything needs to happen immediately. And that's just not the case. I mean, if you have sensors that are on a alarm-based system, then they don't necessarily need to be sending an everything's okay alarm. And the reaction for when things may need to occur are not latency sensitive. I mean, the things that tend to be more latency sensitive are, like you say, I mean, video can be more latency sensitive, but you also, it's more that you provide consistency than necessarily the fastest. I mean, this happens in video conferencing and things like that, and that's one of the reasons why Zoom and Teams and things like that are effective. It's not that they're using a network that's any faster, but they've put in algorithms so that it's smoother. And so latency is very important. I mean, particularly in operations like remote piloting and things, but there's also some predictive analysis that they've built into the designs. I mean, I've customers that are doing remote ROV piloting, so remotely operated vehicle. These are submersibles that are doing inspections on pipelines and things. And when you're remotely flying an ROV, you need very, very sensitive latency types of things, but then also you need it to be very consistent. I mean, you can just take the example, maybe a drone pilot is an easier thing to do, is that if your reaction time is 1 second, then you get used to having that reaction time, and your method of flying would be different. If it's changing from 1 second to 2 seconds to 1 second to 2 seconds, then you're going to be more erratic and you'll be in less control. So latency is important, but I'd say that once you come over the hurdle of having it at an acceptable period, then it comes down to consistency.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can't interrogate a remote computer. So either somebody on a ship talking to a web service from shore, or somebody from shore trying to log into a shipboard engine system. I guess that kind of stuff is quite frustrating to do if you've got to wait an hour for a second for every response coming back, I suppose, isn't it?
Well, it is, but it comes down to expectation. I mean, we use lots of technologies and always have for doing remote operations or remote control. And it is very frustrating if you're working on something and you hit your button and then you wait for a second or two, and then you're waiting for the character to come up and then waiting again and waiting again. And so what then needs to happen is that the interface that the user experiences can help to mask some of that. And so it's all about looking at the end-to-end design and not having the expectation that things will automatically perform in the same manner remotely that they do locally.
Okay, well, we're in the last few minutes now, so I don't know if you'd like to make any sort of concluding remarks, or and something else we didn't talk about was where we see the future in 10 years' time if all this stuff is going in. But I don't know if there's anything you'd like to say just to wrap up with.
Well, I can give a little wrap up. I mean, the new technologies are coming all the time. And I mean, so we've mentioned a little bit with the LEO constellations that are in place. And so that's from the satellite technology side, but then also from the terrestrial side, there's new technologies. I mean, we have 5G that's just around actually is in Norway and in some select areas, but it's coming. And so, and that's really some of the drivers for other communication mediums. So this is one of the things that I really appreciate and love about Marlink's strategy is that we're positioned as an integrator of these different technologies to be able to focus on the problems that particular industries have, not looking to go and solve everything for everyone. So it helps us to maintain kind of critical focus to really deliver to our customers a very high level of customer satisfaction, because it's not the fastest, it's not the newest and the greatest that's important. I think it's more about the quality and sustainability that means everything in the end.
Oh, well, that's fantastic. Well, I think we've covered enormous breadth here, both technologically and business-wise, and we talk about regulations and just about everything, but a big change coming in the shipping industry slowly. And I'll pass back to Vida for the closing words. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Also, thank you, Michael, for sharing your thoughts on remote operations. We're also thankful for Marlin for putting the sponsoring on this webinar. We are grateful for all of you who decided to spend this 1 hour of Thursday with us. Carl and I will be hosting a webinar next week on Tuesday and Thursday at the same time, and we'll be talking with our guest speakers from satcom providers Turaya and AST. You can see all our webinars on the website webinars.digitalship.com. Now Digital Ship is signing off. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.